Welcome to Marketing Demystified, the podcast that connects the dots for business leaders to drive revenue through effective marketing strategy. We chat with marketing experts on different topics that will help you ramp up your revenue. We stream live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platforms. Marketing Demystified, the podcast, is presented to you by GrowGetter, your partner in growth marketing. And here's today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Are you ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered with actionable tips to transform your marketing game? You are in the right place. Welcome to Marketing Demystified. I'm your host, Jenn Mancusi, CEO and co-founder of GrowGetter, your growth marketing partner. Now, insights professionals are obviously great at market research, but how can they effectively market their results and the importance of the work that they're doing every day internally? This can be a huge challenge, and I'm excited to discuss it today with Mark Adams, brand consultant for the Hollywood A-List. Mark is a serial entrepreneur and award-winning global thought leader at the intersection of technology, entertainment, and brand building. He's successfully founded and sold 3 companies and has extensive experience leading digital transformation for over 100 entertainment brands and public figures. After one of his startups was acquired by Vice in 2015, Mark became their chief innovation officer, launched 6 new ventures, won numerous awards, including Emmys, Cannes Lion, and even Oscar nominations. Oh my God. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Hi. I think we should caveat all of that by saying I'm currently at my mum and dad's house. So if you believe that a 40-year-old who still lives with his mum and dad has good advice, continue watching. Otherwise, don't. Yeah.
I can say, trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. This has been a long time coming. We've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm so glad. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, I remember us having a chat in Chicago and ending up realizing we loved the same very niche music. And then we were like, and then it was one of those moments where you're like, no.
Yeah, I'm not going to say, well, I mean, why not? Anybody, any Streets lovers out there?
Yeah, we listen to the Streets, lock down your area. Yeah. Exactly. I was like so boggled. I was like, nobody likes the Streets outside of the tiny town that I live in. Oh, that's so cool.
Global phenomenon. That not the topic of today's conversation.
No, but sadly not.
Sadly not. Well, that'll be the next one. But
exactly.
For now, I mean, one of the other things that we talked about last time we were together is the topic of today's conversation about how insights teams and insights professionals are doing with marketing. And I mean, how are they doing internally, marketing the value of the insights that they're capturing?
Better, but not forceful enough. Mm-hmm. It's the short answer. I think, I mean, at the risk of going on a rant, right? I think that if you look at what's happened to marketing as a function, just look at CMOs, let's go to the top of the tree. There's really no way around this kind of conclusion, which is in many, many companies, the CMO is the lowest rung of the C-suite now. You know, and I think if we as a community, which is what we are, want to be honest, we have to say, how the hell did that happen? You know, how did that happen that the CMO is like, it's kind of like, you know, you've got all these other voices in the room and for some reason they carry more weight now. And I think it's mainly a function of the fact that we as a community of marketeers in whatever different functions we play in, I think we're not bold enough about what we do and what we know that nobody else in the boardroom has a clue how to even begin to think about. And so we kind of let them believe that they might be able to do our job if they just had a bit more time. And that is so far from true. It's like, just because I can run for a bus does not make me like eligible to enter the Olympics, you know? Mm-hmm. And I feel like as a marketing community, not just insights people, but as marketeers, we do need to be a lot more forceful, in a clever way, which I think being forceful doesn't mean, being abrasive. I do think it does mean us getting closer to the numbers, which I know, Jen, you're, very strong on as well. It's like we need to be able to say, we need to go toe to toe with the CFO on anything to do with numbers, and especially on the thing that we're controlling, which is growth. So yeah, we're in an interesting moment right now, and I think the truth is we're all kind of, everybody as an industry of marketeers, we're all kind of like, shit, what's going to happen now? And I think it's kind of our moment to either embolden ourselves, like play a really like strong card, or I think could get even more difficult for us in the next 5 years if we're not careful. So yeah, sorry to start on a down note, but that's my honest opinion.
I mean, I think you're onto something there. And even like looking at smaller companies or earlier stage companies, you see that the CMO role is the last one to be hired in the C-suite, right? It's not like, to your point of like, maybe when there is a complete C-suite, the CMO is sort of bottom of the rung. There, when companies are building and they're thinking about, well, what do I need versus what can I do myself in the short term? CEOs are thinking, I can do the marketing stuff for now, right? I don't need an expert in that area. And that is a result of marketers not proving their value internally. And I think too, like very early in my career, the reason why I'm so numbers focused is very early in my career, I was preparing a strategy presentation and I reviewed it with somebody who said, the CFO is going to be in the room. You need to have a slide that is just for him.
Yeah.
And I was like, that concept was so foreign to me. I'm like, I'm talking about working with sales and working with customer success. But like what you said just like rung that bell for me from years ago. Like that's one of the most important people you need to sell into internally is the CFO.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got to, that kind of word bifurcate, right? Like we've got to be schizophrenic now. We have to be able to speak numbers as well as the CFO.
Yeah.
And we have to speak culture as well as someone from Hollywood, and like and that is an incredible, first of all, it's actually a beautiful challenge. Like if you can do that, and if anyone's going to be able to do it, it's us, right? I mean, like our community, like we really are, like, I think we're a little, like I'm staying with my parents at the moment, and my mum is like, she's kind of hilarious because she's like one of these people that's just spiritual, but in all directions. So like she's got like a healing crystal, but then she's also Catholic, but she also meditates, and like it's quite funny. So you're like, there's a statue of the Buddha next to a, kind of like a crucifix, and one of the things, she's amazing. But one of the things, there's a Buddhist parable of the beggar that's sitting on the box of gold, and I think that's us. I think we're the beggars sitting on a box of gold. Like we have so much authority to tell the boardroom things that they will never be able to get to themselves ever, because they can't even see outside the four walls of where they are. I mean, that their job is to, everyone else in that C-suite's job is to look internally at the business. And our job is to, as marketing, especially as insights people, is to look outside of those four walls. And who else does that at that level of forensic analysis, and also, with the heart and emotional intelligence that I know, the people listening to this have, because I think this industry is so full of just amazing humans, and that's what makes it brilliant. And I think insights people in particular, they are the key to the future. They are the future growth of every business. But the industry itself, like if you think about our function as insights, it's not actually that old. Like the first insights people, it's not like they turned up 200 years ago at the birth of capitalism. We're a new function, and I think we're still finding our voice as a community of experts. But because perhaps we come from the world of quant and qual and science and analysis and stuff. You know, look at an insights person, they'll start a presentation with the methodology of how they got there. Like, I've never seen a CFO start a presentation by explaining how he came to the conclusions that would allow for the specific calculations that he made. Like, he doesn't have to do, or she doesn't have to do that. But we still feel we have to do that. And I would say we don't. Like, we're there because we're really good at what we do. And so we should just get straight into, here are the opportunities for growth for the business. Like, if you want to ask me about the methodology, I'm available, my door's open. But like, you know, that's just one example of where we're kind of, you know, we're kind of doing it to ourselves as much as it's happening to us, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I see a parallel for marketers as well, focusing on channels and tactics as opposed to impact. And that's a great example of that. You know, the CFO is not putting the Excel formulas on their first slide, right?
Yeah.
They're saying this is here's the strategy and why we're doing it and the results so far, whatever it might be, and then ask me about how I got there later. And I mean, I guess not always, but oftentimes insights sitting within a marketing function, right? For the most part, that's shifting a little bit in the last several years. But you know, are we like are marketers making these mistakes and then teaching the insights teams to do the same? Like, where is this all coming from? Why are we doing it this way?
God, that is such a, I mean, that kind of, as you used the expression, rang your bell, but that rang my bell, what you just said there, which is maybe, you know, I feel like, look, we're all of us have been in a 10-year long tactics trap to the point that you made, right? And it's because, I mean, look, if you really look at it, if you really want to go brutal on it, right? What you end up with is the platforms, the Metas and the Googles and stuff, essentially they used our money, our brand dollars, to become the biggest valuations on planet Earth. Then they walled gardened the relationships that they built with our dollars. Like, that was where they got the money from, right? Then they walled gardened that, and now they have what would have been called point of sale, but is now a point of attention. Yeah. With the customer and the audience, and we have to now pay them more money to find out what they know. I mean, it's absurd, right?
Yeah.
Like, and actually, and this is not to be, you know, we shouldn't blame ourselves, but you know, this is where I always do believe that, like, you know, if we end up in a, you know, what does insight do? Insight raises us up. If it was a spiritual metaphor, it ascends us from the game of tactics, right? When you've got a powerful enough insight, you're no longer playing the game of, like, you know, can we get some views? And like, you really have a clarity about your unique, you know, your unique gift to the world, right? Your unique contribution beyond, by the way, just the product, like the actual, for example, the brand, you know, and you have a really clear distinction between that and the product. And then you realize that, kind of, I guess, in terms of, you know, you realize that that particular story or that particular myth that you have carefully built, if you've done it right with that brand, will have pockets of culture that I would call cultural networks, right? And that those cultural networks, they're not just another group of consumers, they're actually potential citizens of your brand. Like, they are willing to get involved way more than just buying you, right? But because we've been so wired by, I think, bad faith actors in the system, and that includes a lot of our agency groups and a lot of our platform partners, and that really what we're essentially, we've kind of tied our self-respect to how hard and how many times a year we hit the big red pay button. And that is bad, because isn't, you know, if marketing is really just, you know, if I'm P&G and you're Unilever and we just get our paid media dollars out, put them on the table, you've got more than me and therefore you get more market share. If that's how it works, I'm out. I'll go and be a teacher or something. Like if that's actually true, I'm done with this industry. But it's not true.
Right.
Because if it was true, that would be a very crass and awful world to be in, and it would be highly unstrategic. It's not true, thank God, because of insights.
Mm-hmm.
And insights changes the nature of that game so that it isn't just a might is right, who's got the biggest budget, pay to play game. It's now a you can completely judo move and throw your opponent, even if you have half their budget.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where insights are like, you know, they're about as sacred as we get in business, right?
Yeah.
So thank God for insights, people. And I just would say maybe if we could, as a community, just have more of a sense of ourselves and more of a kind of maybe we need an insights. I hate to say it, but maybe we need an insights Gary V or an insights like Scott Galloway or an insights, you know. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like we need like a rock star insights, and there are some, but like we should all just fund that one person to go and write 10 books and speak on every stage so that people start going, oh yeah, insights, yeah. But yeah, it's a straight. I hope that we'll look back at this time and say this was like the trough of it's almost like we're in the kind of you know, they say the uncanny valley. You know, something kind of gets to the point where like people don't quite understand it, and then it comes up the other end, and people are, I think maybe as an insights community, we might be about to kind of really get to the place we deserve to be, but we're not really there yet.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting to frame it that way of like insights is the differentiator between marketing. Like all marketing created equally, the thing that makes one brand work or one campaign or one strategy or one tactic work and one not is the insights, right? Being able to take that information and connect with people, or that's what we're trying to do, connect with people. And you can't do that if you don't understand them. But I don't think I've ever heard an insights person say, I am the difference between impactful marketing and not.
Oh, and that is what we need to start to be able to say.
So
Like,
how do we do that? I mean, you said we need to be
Yeah.
more forceful in the boardroom, both marketers and insights people, but how? Like it's not like we don't have these earth-shattering insights at our fingertips. They're there, but they're not getting communicated. So what do insights professionals or marketers need to do differently?
That's a great question. I think the first one is that we need not just the budget to go and find insights, to be what I would call an insights truffle pig, right? Like I used to say to my teams, like, you're an insights truffle pig, go, right? Like that's your life, like that. And by the way, I think that when you're born in that way, like it's almost like something you do in life anyway. You're like a sleuth in the rest of your life as well, even at not at work, right? That's why I love insights people, because it's not even I'm not even sure if it's something you get taught. I think it's just something you're born like, you know. But I think we need to start insisting. This is difficult, but I think it's necessary. I think that we need to articulate our insights at a much higher degree of tangibility emotionally, right? It's almost like I would argue that the most powerful insight in the history of the world, expressed, you know, in an average way, isn't actually a powerful insight yet, because I think how many things you learned when you were young that you learn again when you're older in a different context, and you go, oh my God, it's the same lesson. Right? Like all of life, you know, I'm absolutely obsessed with loads of things now that I wasn't paying enough attention to when I was younger, like economics. I really find economics extreme. I've got a lot of bad things to say about economics as a discipline. I think it's in certain ways awful. But say, for example, behavioral economics, I'm absolutely obsessed with it. But I took economics when I was 17, 18, and none of it meant anything to me. I didn't care. But I think part of that was my lack of awareness. But also, if I'm honest, part of that was that the person teaching me at the time wasn't very good at articulating. It wasn't exactly Dead Poets Society the way he was explaining it to me. Do you know what I mean? And I think we have to remember, I think that as insights people, we are first and foremost teachers. We are literally teachers. We are there to teach. And I think we're really good at gathering insights and not as good as we ought to be at teaching the rest of the organization why that insight is so like goosebump inducing, game changingly, mind shreddingly powerful. And I think the way we need to do that in the absence of just being a very articulate and, whatever, is I think maybe we need to start commissioning like content creators to turn that insight into some short form, it could be a 2-minute long, think of it as like a music video almost, that just explains the power of that insight and let it just sit with audiences internally and let them realize, wow, when you say it like that, I feel it. And, I always say there's only one test for an insight, right? And that is, well, I call it cerebrospinal overload, right? Like when you've got an insight, it's cerebrospinal overload. Like the back of your head just goes, whoa, right? And we need to do a job internally. And when we haven't finished doing our job is not to just gather the insights, put them into a methodological framework that makes sense and is defensible to a bunch of our own peers. Frankly, that's kind of a little bit like self-indulgent. Our job is to take that insight, articulate it like it was with the budget accordingly. I'm not saying you go and get like Christopher Nolan to turn it into a short film, but I'm saying like articulate it, teach them, and then deliver it in a way where you create that cerebrospinal overload where they go, oh my God, wow. And I think we're really good at the first part and not so good at the other bits.
Right. I mean, for years, we've been talking in the industry about storytelling. And I even came into this conversation with you thinking, how can we get insights people to be better storytellers? And that's not what you're saying at all. You're talking about being a teacher, which is very different. And that concept, I think, is interesting. And like, if I think about, I mean, I'm not drawn to being a teacher, but if I think about what I would need to do to like connect with an 8-year-old about a topic and like get them excited about science or whatever it might be, like I am simplifying things in a way and focusing on like looking for tie-ins that make it exciting and that people are going to retain that information. I'm not looking to tell a story or sort of make it this fantastical thing. I'm looking to almost simplify it to get it to reach people, I guess. I don't know. This is what's
I think that's it. It's, I was in the, this is crazy. I think I told you this. I was in the room when Christopher Nolan pitched Interstellar at Warner Brothers, right?
Oh my God.
And it was psychedelic, like of all my clients ever. And, I've had a few good ones, Taylor Swift and Barack Obama and the Queen and all the, by far my favorite client I ever got to work with, just because I just had an insane amount of respect for him, was Chris Nolan. And so we're in the room at Warner Brothers pitching Interstellar, and the way a film pitch works is it's actually very, very similar to what we do as a business in our businesses. Is you have 15 minutes to talk about the principles and the idea. I wouldn't say principles, but just the general theme of the film. And then you have 15 minutes to talk about the people attached to the project, and the more specific things like cinematographer is going to be this guy and she's going to be in it and all this kind of stuff. And then there's about 15, usually it goes on for about half an hour, questions, and then the budget is discussed and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, so Christopher Nolan stands up and he's like, right, I'm here, this is Kip Thorne. Kip Thorne is the world's leading theoretical physicist after Stephen Hawking died. So literally here you have the leading theoretical physicist in the world. So just to say, everything I'm about to tell you isn't philosophy, it's physics, right? And then he says, okay, so first of all, we have these dimensions, and we understand we have 3 dimensions. We know that. And the 3 dimensions we have are space, and then we have this other dimension outside of space, which is called time. And the reason why time is more powerful than space is because space is growing. Somehow redshift theory shows us that the universe is expanding, which means what is it expanding into? Because whatever it's expanding into must be even bigger than that. And that is time, right? And then we have this one other, so we have space, time, and then we have gravity. And gravity is another dimension, which obviously Newton discovered. And then, Einstein did a lot more work on. But gravity essentially is even more powerful than space and time. And we know that because a black hole is a point of infinite gravity in that system, and it sucks in both space and time, right? So Warner Brothers are like this. Right? And then he goes, and our film is about a 4th dimension. It's a 4th dimension. If you look on any bookshelf ever, look on your own bookshelf now, you'll see that that dimension is ever present, has always been throughout time. It's a dimension we all understand, but we don't understand it as a dimension. We just think it's an emotion, but it's not an emotion. It's a dimension, the way gravity is. And our film is about what would happen if somebody got inside the middle of a black hole, and they could, because we believe that if you could get into the middle of that, you would be able to see this other dimension that goes across everything. And that dimension is love. Now, Chris Nolan, in his own way, he basically had won the pitch to get $210 million to make a movie by then. Yeah. He didn't have to say, oh, and Hans Zimmer does the score, and Matt Damon's the new cameo, and we have Matthew McConaughey. Like, now, like, there was cerebrospinal overload for at least half the people in that room because they could understand it. The rest had to have it explained. But for the people that got it, including the main person who has the purse strings, it was cerebrospinal overload. It was it. Everyone just went, oh, fuck. That's a big idea, right? And that feeling, that hairs on the back of your neck, hairs on your arm feeling, that's your job. Mm-hmm. Not all the shit before it. All the shit before it is that's just practice to work up to the big game day. Game day, your job is to go in there and knock people out.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I think as an industry, we've put so much effort, and God bless us, we put so much effort on some of the things that don't really achieve that knockout.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think that insights professionals and marketers have been given the space to do that? Or, because we talk a lot about, like, as an insights professional, as a marketer, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to create. This is what you need to present. But they're being asked to tell us, do people want the red package or the blue package?
Yeah.
Right? Do people want the strawberry or the strawberry raspberry combo flavor? Right? Yeah. This is what they're being asked. So I guess maybe the question is, like, what do the other members of the C-suite need to do differently to give marketers and insights folks the space to blow their minds?
Yeah. Yeah. And this, by the way, is obviously a question now, not of principle, but of politics, right? So, like, if you're listening here, I don't know what the politics of your organization are. I don't know what you do on a Tuesday morning or a Thursday afternoon. I can't help you on that, right? But I can say this. The more you show up with the intent, like, I give talks, right? And I think I get asked, I'm not even that good. I'm certainly not as clever as many of the people that speak before me or after me, but I do have a different level of intent when it comes to making the audience feel something. Mm-hmm. I'm not there to show that I'm clever. Like, I dress like an idiot. I swear, I vape on stage. I'm an idiot. Like, by every single metric that matters, that doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't matter, right? But that other people think matters. I'm not doing any of those things right at all. I'm just focused on one thing, which is I'm going to make motherfuckers laugh their head off, cry, and feel all in the spectrum in between that, right? They're going to feel something. And it's not because of me. It's probably because of a piece of work that I'm going to show, or someone in the audience. I'm going to get someone in the audience to talk about their life, and that's going to evoke that feeling. It's not, I'm not clever. I'm not doing it. I'm not, but it's almost like I've given up trying to be clever because there's something more sacred that I need to focus on. That's getting people to feel. And I think that our industry has yet to give up trying to be clever. We still, you know, that thing, right? You must have been, every girl and every guy's been on a date with someone who's like, and then you did this, and then, and you're like, oh, who gives a fuck, man? Do you want to feel something? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't mean like sexually, but like, just fucking say something that gives me goosebumps, man. Just get on with it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, what is attractive? And by the way, that's just true in business. Like, I've never done a thing correct. And all the people I know in entertainment, you don't really focus on doing all those things that don't actually, it's like, again, it comes back to the tactics trap, right? It's like, I'm sitting here wearing a death metal hoodie, right? Like, yeah, maybe I should wear a suit, right? But it doesn't matter. That's the point. It's just it's kind of like you're tweaking tiny little bits of the funnel. Like, who cares? Just like make a massive hole in the dam and let a torrent of water just crash into the minds of the audience, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where, you know, and you're right. It's not storytelling. It's principle. It's making distinction between policy and principle, because policies are arbitrary things that are different across every single organization, and principles are universal concepts that are true in all times, always, in all places, always, with all people, always. And that's the level that an insight exists at, right? An insight isn't variable in the way that most insights people think it is. You know, your job is to get to that, like, oh my God. Like, I'll give you an example, like Brian Chesky, right? So I knew him. He was the founder of Airbnb. He was coming to me saying, how do we make our marketing funnel more effective? This is classic Silicon Valley. All the Silicon Valley companies, they're all taught like lean startup, growth hack your way to, and it's great. It's awesome, right? But, you know, he's like, look, we've got this website, but I feel like it could be optimized and optimized here and optimized, like you're saying about, like, is it the red or is it the, is it the strawberry or the, we're A/B testing here and here. And I'm like, Brian, the reason your business isn't taking off and the reason your ads aren't getting traction is because no motherfucker wants to give their house to a complete stranger. You know, you can optimize the funnel here and optimize the something here. But the point is, the challenge, the actual real challenge, the dragon you must slay, is the one that human beings have not yet, in this generation at least, been taught that what belongs to me can also, for a period of short time, belong to someone else. And that is a principle that you need to change. So the marketing isn't about how effectively you can do all these other things. You're not marketing the product, you're marketing the principle. And that is what the best brands in the world do. The best brands in the world find principles that are deep at the level of insight. It's an insight, another word for principle. And they market the principle, not the product.
Yeah.
And so Airbnb, we worked with them, and the thing we came up with was belong anywhere. And so when it first started, it became this, it was a principle. It was like, you know what? We all want to believe that we are a community of people who can trust one another. And so I will put my house on and I'll see what happens, because it's a principle. I love the idea that there's a zig against the capitalist zag. The capitalist zag says, no, you got to stay in a Marriott because you can't trust anyone. And you put there's 3 locks on the door, right? But meanwhile, the Airbnb guys were contending with a different thing. They were trying to change society's opinion. And they did.
Yeah. 100%. They absolutely did. And I love, thanks for this comment, Jennifer. That's exactly what I was thinking, is like the principle comes from the insight, from the research.
I don't know you, Jennifer, but I like you. Yes, that's it. We're the guys, I'm not joking. We are the fucking alpha and the omega.
Yeah.
We are the fucking alpha and the omega. And I'm not saying you should, look, I'm a complete lunatic, so I go into rooms and beat my chest just for the fun of it. But again, you have to not care in order to do that, right? But we are the people that come and say, here is the sacred fucking substance of which you will form the clay of the next growth spurt of the business. I love you, Jennifer. But you know, it's no joke. That is, we are mining and pulling out of the ground the powerful principles on which all the rest of everything else is built. And we need to make sure that these organizations understand that a bit better. But we also need to do our own work a little bit better to make that more clear.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think are some of the ways, like, what do you recommend, like, talking about your approach to, like, you walk in the room, and I mean, I've been in rooms crying because you're on stage showing a Gillette ad of an old man getting, I've been there, right? I've been the laugh cry, whatever. Like, what can marketers or insights leaders learn from some of those, like the Christopher Nolan example or other entertainment examples, or the work that you're doing to create those better narratives? Or, what are some like tactical things people can think about doing to walk in the room differently and not present to 50% of people think X?
Yeah. Great question. I think just to start with the last point you made about 50% of people think X. I mean, and I've got this very strong opinion on this concept that the internet, my first company was invested in by Sean Parker, who obviously started Napster and was the crazy guy in the movie, played by, I forget who played him now. But, like the guy who was the president of Facebook. And I think one of the best, this is an insight. It might not be as emotional as the others, but it certainly, stood me in a really good stead. Is I remember Sean Parker saying to me, everyone will run after every new iteration and tactic and, kind of gimmick, I guess, and trick. And he said, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to sit and keep meditating on one idea. And that idea is that the internet is an interconnected set of networks, and that those networks are cultural, not socio-demographic. And when that really hit me, when he'd said it like 3 or 4 times over different investor meetings we were having, I was like, that's first principle thinking, right? It's like, we God bless the platforms, but the platforms built artificial systems of ads on top of the authentic networks of culture that exist. They exist whether or not, if all the brands in the world disappeared, the advertising system would be empty, right? There'd be no ads on it. But the actual systems of people connecting over passionate things that they love would still exist. So it precedes brands, and it will live on after brands if there is ever a time. By the way, I would go as far as to say as we are entering a phase now that I would refer to as community capitalism, where many things that the market economy used to charge you for, your community will give to you for free.
Yeah.
Right. So now in the old, I'm a failed music producer, just like everyone from Essex. So in the old days, I'd have to take a course online how to use this software. And now I just type anything into Google, and there's 100 videos made by another mad, lonely member of the community like me, who's like, this is how you do this particular thing. And they're not doing it for money. Not really. And so what has happened with education, what started with entertainment moved to education. You could basically do a degree in anything you want now just by finding the right, people in the right networks and following them on YouTube, right? And soon it will be the Internet of Things. So someone will be, I bought a 3D printer the other day, and I found this dude who's into 3D printing. He's like, hey, here's my scans for how to 3D print a mug. So I 3D printed the mug that he sent. I didn't go to IKEA and buy the mug. I didn't go to whatever Macy's and buy the mug. I downloaded a free scan and printed it out for what was essentially about 30 cents on my 3D printer. And that is what will happen. The whole market economy will start to blend with this community economy, and it's going to get interesting. So anyway, point being, I think now for marketeers, I would say, first of all, it's our job to tell the boardroom that socio-demographic segmentation is an absurdity, right? Like, we can layer it back in later, but we won't get to any insights from there, right? Because you can't, guess what? Being born in a random 16-year birth window that determines your generation doesn't actually have any cohesion score, right? It's not like I meet another 41-year-old male and go, oh my God, me too, right? So what does have cohesion score? What has cohesion score is the things that people choose to spend their time, attention, money on, in their spare time, right? And that has an insane cohesion score. And so us as marketeers, we have to start looking, as Sean Parker said, out across those networks. Our first job is to be conscious of other life. And only we are going to do that. Think, who else in the boardroom is going to be able to even begin to get their heads around that? Like, no one is going to be able to get that. And by the way, this chief growth officer role, which is growing now, and I think it's amazing. Let's just hope the chief growth officer used to be a marketeer, because if they're not from the ilk of marketing, they're not a chief growth officer. They're just someone else tinkering with the inner workings of the company. And so we need people who are going to be able to look up and out across this horizon of increasingly millions of not demographic, but like passion-based community networks. And there's thousands, right? Taylor Swift is obviously one of the most extreme examples, but all the way down to weird little people who like this weird little thing. And that's the long tail that Chris Anderson talked about when he said the fundamental shift in economics will be from this idea of one big mainstream that you're supposed to go after to this huge long tail of opportunity for growth. Because there's all these people that like all these weird things. Like, my mum is obsessed with true crime documentaries now. And then we can't stop her. It's another true crime documentary. But that's because Netflix has opened all these streaming platforms have allowed a much higher carrying capacity for many, many different types of content, which means we can suddenly realize, I actually really love this. I never thought I did, but I do. And then you get sucked deeper and deeper into those systems with the algorithms, either on Netflix or on TikTok or whatever. That's what TikTok is. It's the TikTokification of the world is just these algorithms reinforcing the thing that you're, the weird little niche you're in. So now we have this market opportunity that is thousands and thousands and thousands of growth opportunities, but each one of them seems too small for major FMCG businesses. So guess what? They don't go after them. So guess what? All these small new companies come up out of nowhere because they will go after those niches.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to turn around and make the argument that all the growth we need in the world, even if we're Coca-Cola, comes from all these stacked niches. By the way, and when I say niche, they're not that niche either. They're just smaller than the socio-demographics we used to go after, but they're still substantial. And so we can build our growth strategy by many, many, many layers of these networks and activation of these. But that's our main job, I think, now. And you know what's beautiful about that is if you play that game and you treat that as your job, no one can touch you in the boardroom. They can only touch you when you define the audience in a way that's socio-demographic, because then their opinion's just as valid as yours. What can you say about Gen Z? They love their phones. They hate their phones. It's a paradox. Whatever you say, you can say the opposite. So you can sit forever and talk about it, and every idiot in the boardroom can have an opinion because they're like, well, I have a daughter. And it's like, no, that's not what we are here to do. The growth opportunities exist in these very fucking coherent, dense networks online, and they pre-exist the brands, and they will exist after brands, but they are there, and we can grow with them. And when you start speaking in that terms, you'll realize the rest of the C-suite will shut the fuck up because they won't have anything to say. They'll just be like, oh,
yeah. That's such an amazing, like, sort of concept to focus on. And I feel like, with the way technology has evolved over the years since social media first came into play, like, it used to be that was kind of all you had was
Yeah.
sociopathic. Like, now there is this, like, and also to your point about advertising, like, the opportunities today are not paid. Like, those networks of culture are visible in a way that they never were before. You can go onto TikTok and you can see book talk or this or that or whatever. And those communities are massive. And all you have to do is, like, get involved at the right moment. If you're paying attention and you've done the right research and you understand those communities and what they care about, then you as a brand can insert yourself in a really authentic way and a really organic way and have a massive, massive impact. It's no
Yeah.
longer like, oh, I'm going to retarget people that saw this page to direct them to another page. It's like, here's where this conversation is happening. I'm going to participate in it. And I know how to because I've done the research.
And I love that. And my thing would be this. This would be my, if anybody just said to me, give me the one sentence about how to make your job a joy and how to win all the time, I would say, stop seeking to communicate, start seeking to see. If you want to be seen, you first have to see these networks, right? Like and by the way, no one in the organization, apart from the insights and marketing teams, even have the faintest hope of seeing that. No one else will see it. But it's so beyond their capability. It's so far outside the boardroom. They won't be able to do it. So first of all, that's your strategic advantage, because when you start speaking with that language, you'll notice they defer very quickly to you. They're like, oh, well, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So yeah, you must be right. And then the second thing is, when you seek, once you find a community, then it really is a spiritual question. I'm not joking. The question is, what do you want to do now that you've found that community? Like, it exists. Let's say Book Talk, great example. So you know that there's a bunch of Gen Z that are absolutely obsessed with reading books, and it breaks down. It's Russian dolls. There's so many different types of it, and it's mind blowing, right? You do your diligence and you really get into it, and you start to understand the principles that make it tick. The worst thing you can do at that moment is try and communicate at that network.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what most brands would defer to do, because most marketing teams, unfortunately, that's what we're stuck in that world. Right. But what if you, as you just said, Jen, so perfectly, what if you didn't seek to communicate? What if instead you sought to contribute? Because that's what fame is. When I was working with Taylor Swift, we would see that a 14-year-old girl would write under one of the posts that it was her birthday on Saturday. We'd realize that girl lived in Nashville. We'd realize Taylor was playing a show in Nashville on Saturday. We'd send Taylor to the girl's birthday, and she would pick up the girl and a bunch of mates and bring her backstage at the show, and we'd film it all, right? Now, if you believe that making a contribution is too expensive, right? Then just remember that Taylor Swift has a higher price per hour than your whole organization combined, right? And she makes the time to go to a 14-year-old girl's birthday and bring her and her mates backstage for the gig, right? And she does that because it's a contribution, but it's not just a contribution to that little birthday party. It's a contribution to the community. Do you see
all
what I
the
mean?
Swifties, yeah.
All this, and that's what brands don't understand. They still think everything is a media audience, but they don't realize that you have to have a muse community that you work with and you contribute to and you collaborate with, and then you create myths that go so far without any paid media. You'll be so shocked. Like, you'll be trying to embargo the story and the press will just be running it for you, and you'll be like, oh, right? Like, you won't be able to stop it, right? Because you've earned fame. And then you can take the content that you made, and I would advise you to the content that you make should be about the reaction of the Muse community, not about you. Should be about them, right? Should be about them. And then you can take that and you can turn it into content and blast it at reach and frequency and efficient CPM, like Byron Sharp tells you to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is the new model. And by the way, just, you said it so right. It's like, you've got to earn your way. We're so busy. I had to give a talk a couple of weeks ago, and I started with a picture of a cat that was on a mat. And then I had showed a picture of a cat that was in a hat. Like, really psychedelic. And I was like, it's this simple. You're a company and you are on the internet. I'm saying that your from to shift is from being on the internet to being in the internet. That's it. Get in the fucking internet and stop spending all your money being on the internet.
Yeah.
Right?
It's sort of a very, I would almost say obvious, like, lesson in customer centricity. Like, it's about the community and the consumer or your customer, and it's not about you. And every business out there right now is saying that that's a priority for them.
Yeah.
Right? Being customer centric is a priority, being people first, right? But actually doing that just means putting yourself in that community instead of at it or on it or whatever you describe. Like, it's almost seems too obvious.
It is that simple. And you know what, people, I always say, like, if you really want to be facetious, you say, like, can everybody in this room count to 1? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, good. Brilliant. What about, can we count to 2? And they're like, yeah, we can count to 2. It's like, okay, great. So here it is. It's a left, right? Number 1, you go in the internet, you find a community that needs exactly the brand equity that you have to give, right? If you're Dove, you find the body positivity community, right? You work with them, you collaborate with them, you work inside their networks, you contribute, you don't try and communicate, you give, you assess their needs, you work with them. They become essentially part of your marketing team. Basically, they're like unpaid members of your organization, right? And they will love it. They will be citizens of your brand, right? They will literally do it for free.
Yeah.
And then, but don't think about media. Don't think about media. This is not about reach and frequency. This is about creating a cultural myth, right? And then you create this cultural myth that means that human attention, even if you're not in the, I'm not somebody that should have any allegiance with the body positivity movement, but I'm bloody glad that somebody out there is standing up for that, because my principles speak to the idea that a human being is as equal as someone else, just no matter what size their dress is. And you agree with that, and so does every listener here, right? So now you're playing in the game of principles. And now you're playing in the game of cultural leadership, because you're saying, I'm going to raise the consciousness of this category, because this is a category where everybody's talking about size 0 models and whitening products and all this kind of stuff. And Dove come along and go, we're going to raise the consciousness of the category. And P&G, the day that comes out, realize it's over. Like, they're done. Their market share it's over. They're never going to catch Dove ever. And they haven't.
Right.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So your job is look at that category, realize what the next evolution of consciousness needs to be there, find the right community that you could create that beautiful, powerful myth with, that explains that in a really beautiful, succinct way. Do it, and then film it and make ads out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like, I always have these conversations where I'm like, my next question is, how do you measure it? But it doesn't even become a question anymore if you're doing this properly, right? The impact is there in the market share, in the engagement. Like, it's so obvious that there isn't like the question comes up a lot in like brand work or positioning work or, things like that, things that are not cost per conversion, you know? But it should be obvious, like everything lifts if it's done properly.
Well, the question is, what are you scaling?
Yeah.
Look, here's the thing. We're in a world where you can scale anything, right?
Yeah.
I've sold a couple of businesses. There's no reason I've got, frankly, the means to put my own face on a billboard all over London just saying, it's me. I can scale that. But it's not wise to scale that, right?
Yeah.
That is not, there's nothing about that worth scaling.
Yeah.
So well done. We have the ability to scale anything. The question is, what do you want to scale? And the answer is you want to scale fame, because fame is earned love. That's what the entertainment industry knows that Madison Avenue still hasn't figured out. And you know what's amazing about scaling fame? Look at Nike. I'm pretty sure you can tell I'm not black, right? But I know that Nike licensed Colin Kaepernick in the middle of the Black Lives Matter protests and made him a Nike athlete exactly the same week that he was thrown out of the NFL disgracefully, right? Now, what do you think happened in Adidas HQ in Herzog in Germany when they saw that? I bet you, because their consciousness is lower than the people at Nike, they were like, oh, well, that's a bit political, don't you think? But by the time Nike had put it on every billboard and made an ad out of it and blasted it all over the world, Adidas were crying into their soup.
Yeah.
Because the amount of market share that they had rightfully, like, and I mean this, like, honestly, like morally, they deserved to lose because they sit on the fence while Nike says, no, stand for something. Right. And so I'm not saying get political. I'm not saying like this is all I'm saying is you just got to do. You don't have to be as activist as that. You know, you could just go turn up at someone's birthday party. Right. Like Taylor Swift wasn't being activist. She is now. But she got the playbook. And the playbook is you earn, own, and share every single dollar you can before you hit the red paid button. And sometimes when you get so good at it, you don't even hit the red paid button.
You don't have to.
I mean, it's rare. You should. I think you should. You should always be ready to turn that into content and blast it. But one of the things I used to say at Vice when I was at Vice was, no, like people used to say to me, I want to make some content about this. I said, no, well, you haven't earned the right to make any content. Send someone behind the lines to embed with ISIS and show us something no one's ever seen in the history of the world, and I'll give you the budget to turn that into content. But if you do something that is utterly, you know, it's like if you just do something that doesn't have any fame, there's no reason for anyone to sit at dinner and say, did you ever see that? But if that's your plan, if your plan is to scale what I would call non-tent, it's not. It's non-content. Just
I love that.
Not content. The opposite of content.
Yeah.
Right. So your plan is most brands are trying to scale nothing.
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is, literally, my whole argument in the whole world ever is, yeah, you can scale something, and with love and respect, and I don't mean to be facetious, but how you decide to scale that is way beneath my pay grade. Like, you don't bring me in to ask me questions about media. Like, I used to run a media company. I don't answer questions about like which channel. Like, that's up to you, right? But what you bring me in to do is answer the question, what do we scale?
Yeah.
Because that is the actual question, and the answer comes back to insights, right? You scale a principle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this point in the comments too. Thank you again for the job is not to tell people how to think or act. It's to understand how they're already feeling, what they're already thinking about, understand what they're already doing, and participate in it. Join them.
It. I mean, honestly to God, like brutally, like I'm going to go to Cannes Lions next week. 2 years ago, I won 36 Cannes Lions, right? I'm not even a creative director. The point is, my team and I had I think the humility to say, well, who is the creative director? The Muse community.
Mm-hmm.
It's them.
Yeah.
We have, like, any story has to have more than one character. Like, you can't have a hero without any community that the hero serves. The hero can't just be going around being it. Like, the hero has to have earned the ability to call himself or herself a hero, right? And so you've got to find a community that needs you, and you've got to realize that there's this, it's almost like Tinder or whatever. It's almost like an algorithmic, and you can use AI to do this, that there should be an algorithmic matchmaking process between the equity of the brand, not just the product, but the equity, what the brand is and what it stands for, and the community that is in need. And every community is in need. That's the thing. You know, once you get past the boardroom, you realize, wow, you know, I was in London earlier today, and everywhere you go, there's like signs up saying this city is not safe for cyclists. And it's true. Like, every day cyclists in London just get killed. You know, one brand who had the mind to say, we're going to start supporting cyclists who don't deserve to die on the roads, would, without spending a penny, win so many hearts and minds. And then they could scale that and turn it into a million different, you know, brilliant activations and all that stuff. But they'd have to commit to solving and helping to contribute to that community at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. I think brands have a really hard time narrowing their focus on a singular community, or, like, to your point about the big CPGs, and, you know, that's that cultural, you know, network is a lot smaller than the socio-demographic network, you know, so it feels like there's less opportunity, but actually done well, there's more opportunity. But again, it's got to be based on research and insights. It can't just be random, or, you know, we can't just say, oh, we want to sell more, you know, boxed water to Taylor Swift fans. Like, there's got to be a reason.
Absolutely.
There's a connection there.
And you know what's amazing is, you know, I used to be in the world of entertainment, and I'd be the guy that would get the call from the brand asking how much would it cost to have Taylor on the Pepsi can for a year.
Yeah.
Right? And the answer is, think of the highest number you can possibly think of.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're damaging Taylor's cultural credibility and she's improving yours.
Right.
Right? But if the brand called up and said, I'll give you an example. Emma Watson, right? She was one of my clients, and Andy Puddicombe, the founder of Headspace, called up and said, I don't have the money for this, but I know that Emma Watson uses our product, and I think that our product is something that helps human beings, and I would like to see if Emma would be interested in talking about that more, because we think we have a mental health problem and that human beings need to be. And we said, Emma, we've had a call from a brand, they don't really have any money, and she said, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Because it was a mission.
Yeah.
And the mission wasn't just shift more downloads of Headspace. It was, don't we all agree that, like, we probably need to learn to meditate as a society now? You know, so the thing, here's the thing. I'm a VC now, right? I work in the world of venture capital. And what I would say to the big companies, and I love them dearly, but I would say this: people like me are going to continually build billion-dollar, maybe not multi-billion-dollar, but billion-dollar valuations on this, what you would call niche, but we don't call niche, we call market, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to move to the next market. We'll build another company, $1 billion. And then we'll build another company, $1 billion. We've got another one, $1 billion. How many of those billion-dollar businesses can you withstand before your market share starts to seriously collapse because you ignored those markets?
Yeah.
How many businesses can me and my mates build and get to billion? You know, I'm on the board of, like, Headspace, I'm on the board of Gymshark, I'm on the board of Calm.com. All of these are $1 billion valuations, right? In niches, as far as a big company would call it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's not that niche, because if the new game is that you're, you know, here's the thing, we're still standing. If it was a, you know, baseball, I'm not much of an expert, but the big brands are still saying that I need to take the ball and hit one big massive swing out the stands and it needs to land over there, and we'll spend 500 grand on one campaign just to hit it right out the park. That's madness.
Yeah.
It's money ball. The ball comes, boop, the ball comes, boop, next base, ball comes, boop, money ball.
Yeah.
You accrue growth methodically, repeatably, predictably. Guess what happens? Wall Street starts saying, these motherfuckers aren't exactly explosive, but they're so consistent. And what does Wall Street look for? Consistency, right? Then you can start to say, we're not a growth stock. We're not a value stock. We're a growth stock, because we can keep just adding layers of growth as we go after these different markets, right?
Yeah.
But if you keep trying to smash it out the stands, it's a punishing existence.
Yeah.
And even your best talent, even the person who's at the FMCG business right now listening to this, I guarantee you after 3 or 4 wines, they're thinking, what small scale up can I go to?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because this whole playbook is fucked. And I need something tangible I can get my mind and my heart around. So I need a smaller market opportunity that's real, that isn't a figment of my marketing director's imagination.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amazing. I don't know if we've solved the world problems here or not, but it's been such a great conversation.
It's such a pleasure, Jen. Honestly, like, I love the way you think, and it is really true. Like, just really, it's so true that we, as a community of people who are marketeers, and especially on the insight side, you meet another person like you, talk about cohesion score. We have got all the same pain, all the same passion, all the same joy. We are like a family of people that never got to meet yet. And so whenever you meet another insights person, it's such a deep rabbit hole so quickly. Like, you're like, oh my God, like we have so much shared frustration.
Sure.
I think that's what you and I had when we first met. So it's just a pleasure to kind of get more into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you described yourself at one point in the conversation as an idiot, but then also mentioned you won something like 36 Cannes Lion Awards last year and are going next week. So I would argue that you are not that at all. And good luck to you next week. That's amazing. And yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending the time.
Thank you. And so lovely to meet you, Jennifer, as well.
My dear friend Jennifer, thanks for participating in the conversation. Thanks everybody for tuning in, listening in today. I'll be back with another episode soon where I will chat with Carrie